Hey there, greetings everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Plan B Success. Today we have Jim Terry with us, who is the founder, president, and CEO of TDS Public Affairs, a company that has been manning since 2007, primarily focused in strategic communications, public affairs, grassroots, and paid media services for corporates. Now, Jim has been around the block quite a bit in terms of working with policy as well as campaign arenas, and a lot of legislative, strategic communications, and management skills that he brings to his clients as a result of his experiences helping run effective and winning campaigns. Having said that, let's welcome Jim and hear from him his story. So, welcome, Jim.
Rajiv, thank you. Thanks for having me on today.
Awesome. So, before we jump into what TDS Public Affairs is all about, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Myself, when your show Plan B, I think my whole life is, or at least the latter half of my life has been a Plan B. I grew up, in the South doing just about everything you can do under the sun to make a living. Build houses, roofed houses, drove trucks, bulldozers, you name it. If you can do it to make a living, I've just about done it. And eventually made my way into college, and then found my way into politics. And people often ask me how I got into politics, and I always kind of say it started with the phrase, "They can't do that." And just sort of stuck with that, and along the way have been blessed to have a lot of opportunities to work as a chief of staff in the United States Congress, a campaign manager on some of the high profile races in the country. We bring all of that experience, and my whole team has similar experiences to our clients. And we pride ourselves in being able to offer superior strategy and being willing to outwork everybody else.
That's pretty awesome. I'm still curious, politics of all things. How did you still stumble into it?
I was in Southern California, living in Southern California at the time, and started to get more engaged with the world around me, and within rules and regulations and laws and things that were affecting my life personally. And just, started kind of pursuing what can be done about that. And, I tell people it's, politics isn't rocket science. It's, pretty simple math. If you got enough people with you, you win. If you got enough people against you, you lose. And, it became an interesting study of sort of human nature and human behavior. And it was something that I had a knack for, and just have over the last 30 years been building on that.
So you started TDS Public Affairs sometime in 2007, so coming up on 15 years now. What prompted that? Why did you go down the entrepreneurial route after being around the circuit for quite a bit of time?
Yeah, I decided it was better to have, rather than to be subject to the whims of one boss, to be subject to the whims of 15 or 20. No, it was just, you hit that point in life, and I made the decision that I wanted to build something. I had provided a lot of great services, a lot of, and built processes and strategies and things that, that were durable, but I built them for other people. And so I kind of made a decision. I wanted to build an asset and to build a business on my own. And, I had a little capital at the time, and I said, well, this is how many months I can live until I run out of money and have to go get a job again. And that was 15 years ago.
So, when you started TDS and what it is today, is your vision fulfilled with the journey that you've taken so far?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, in the grand scheme of the vision, certainly, I didn't have to go get another job. So, making it fly, that part of the vision certainly came out. But a lot of the specifics change along the way. When I first sat on my couch and decided I was going to do this, because in the beginning, you have a website you build a website and you get a business card, because that website and that business card is the only thing that distinguishes you from self-employed or unemployed. And, and so you sit down, and I had this long list of all the people that I thought, I was going to be able to get work from, and almost none of them is how it panned out. And so I think it's a lot of the specifics that you're trying to see around corners and envision how things are going to go. But at the same time, that's where I think it's important to have strategic principles that guide that, and because that's what allows you to sort of adapt the specifics and still be successful.
Your experience has been in the politics arena, but now you also work a lot with corporates, and you're serving corporates in getting their message out and things like those. How did that evolution occur? Was that something that you stumbled upon, or was it a conscious decision?
Well, it's everything is political now, and it's the industry to influence the federal government or government entities at all levels is multi-billion dollars every year. Because the reality is that, way back in the beginning when, the founding fathers set this up and the federal government was small, now if you look around the room around you, every single element, right down to the writing that's on the light bulb in your room, some federal government entity has a say-so in that. And so, it's really difficult to sort of separate business and government and business and politics these days, where, powerful agencies can, with the stroke of a pen, emaciate an entire industry or eradicate it. And so it was a pretty natural transition to begin helping people, helping corporations and companies navigate that, whether that's fend off negative legislation or whether that's move legislation that's helpful to them. And then from there, as every other aspect of the business is increasingly politicized, and you start thinking about, what your policies are and how those things are going to play in the public arena and how you should talk about them. And it's a pretty natural, transition for us.
So do you have any opinion whether it's a good thing or a bad thing?
Whether everything is politicized?
Yeah.
Well, I think it's that's a kind of a very broad question in the sense that, good or bad. I think there are elements to the fact that, if you think about the construct of America, from the beginning, we are set up with institutions and principles that we haven't lived up to always. But these institutions and these principles are what allow us and drive us to seek to always become a more perfect union. And so I think in the sense that we are seeking to grow and improve, there's certainly, elements of that are positive. But along with that, comes sort of the abusive side of it, comes the side where if politics itself becomes the greatest good and political power becomes its greatest good, and doing what's right, seeking the truth get lost, that can certainly take on a more negative characteristiks.
So, what are the services that TDS Public Affairs provides today?
Sure. We kind of like to sum it up and say we help you tell your story. Mm-hmm. And whether that is helping you shape your story, because, very often our stories are most interesting to us, and kind of figuring out why does the audience care? Which audience do I want to speak to, and why do they care about my issue? And then interpreting, your story in a way that makes it relevant and actionable by your targeted audience. And a lot of times that may be a writing job. That may be just the words that get put on paper. But a lot of times that's also structural and initiative driven within your company. If you want to, because the first three letters of news is new. And so, being newsworthy is about providing new information. And so we can help people develop initiatives and programs and approaches to what they're doing that makes it more newsworthy. And then, of course, we help them drive that message to key audiences. And we do that through a variety of mediums, whether that's the press and the media, and on the earned media side, whether that's building a coalition of third-party voices who will echo your story and your message, or whether that's through paid mediums and reaching targeted audiences with targeted messages.
Some of the work that you've done, you've worked with brands in terms of helping them become a nationally recognized brand. You worked with authors, helping them launch books. How does this differ? Do you have some kind of a secret sauce in terms of how you approach this, or do you kind of tailor it to each client that you have?
Yeah, every case is unique for us, because when you think about the specifics of any one, say a book or an issue that you have, it has in and of itself its own attributes. It has, a protagonist. It has, an antagonist. It has all of the elements sort of a story unto itself. But that story needs to fit into the larger story, which is kind of the societal conversation that's going on at any point in time. And so the art form of kind of figuring out where those 2 points meet is, I think, what we excel at. Now structurally, when you think about press, media, all of the kind of the tactical tools all remain pretty consistent across all the platforms, but how we leverage them and what kind of input we use as far as the content and the story and the framing of the message and the audience targeting is all very unique and specific to every client.
So, from the standpoint of the services that you provide, there's pretty niche aspects as well, like crisis management, for instance, grassroots advocacy and stuff. So is this a mix of clients? Is this both, commercial as well, corporates, as well as government clients that you have?
We don't do work for government agencies or any of the government entities, but our primary clientele is corporations, trade associations, and nonprofits. And the nonprofits sort of run the gamut from more politically affiliated to sort of less politically affiliated. But and the common thread of all of them is they're all trying to affect change of some sort. They're all trying to initiate action of some sort. So whether the action is, I want you to buy my widget, or the action is, I want you to donate money to me, or the action is, I need you to oppose this bad legislation. It's really, the conversion for us is always towards action, but to get to that action, you've got to tell your story. And sometimes that action is just brand perception. I want you to think, we want you to think, to see, we believe we're a good company. We believe we're doing good things, and we need you to know about that. And so it's, the through line for all of it is helping people tell their story to achieve the desired outcome.
And how do your clients find you?
www.tdspublicaffairs.com is the best way to find us. We have phone numbers and email contact on there, and to reach out and find us. And of course, word of mouth. Word of mouth is a big one for us. That's why we're very committed to making sure that we give the utmost attention, because a lot of what we do is very reactive. Something has happened in your world, and you've got to have an answer right now, and you need us on the phone right now, and to be very responsive. And we always tell people is we're a small firm, and we swim in deep waters, and we compete with a lot of big firms, and those big firms have these giant brands that create expectations, but they also create a lot of margins for people to make assumptions that we're getting the best because we got this big brand. And I always tell my team, we have to earn that reputation every day of the week. And we do it by working harder and being smarter and giving our clients more.
Do you specifically target clients of certain sizes or certain industries, or are you pretty open?
Yeah, we're pretty agnostic, across the board. We're certainly, your story is your story, and it doesn't really matter what your story is. We can help you. We can help you tell it. And we do typically trend towards, mid cap to larger cap on the business side, just because of sort of the weaponry that we bring to the table is often more suited for larger battles.
In terms of your own experiences over the last, 2+ decades, when you look back at the way things were back then and how they have evolved over time, any particular trends or any particular thoughts that you'd like to share in terms of however you would consider it, the evolution or the devolution of the dynamics?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's, I mentioned earlier that, everything is political now. Mm-hmm. 20 years ago, there was politics and there was this kind of bright line between sort of the rest of life, but now, what products you buy are tinged with political considerations. There's so many more aspects of American life have been politicized than they were 20 years ago. And in part, that's been, I think, facilitated by the other significant change is the digital environment, the digital communications environment. And there's been, certainly democratization of that, but there's also been kind of the negative downside of that. Can you think back to, even Bill Clinton's first term? If you wanted information, you needed to get your information from from CBS, NBC, ABC, Washington Times. They held a monopoly on information. But now you have many sources to get information, whether it's accurate or not information, but you have a lot of sources to get your information. And so the combination of all of that is where a lot of American life has become more politicized, and these sources of information have dramatically exploded. What people are often looking for is not information. They're looking for affirmation that their worldview is correct, that they're right and the other guys are wrong. And that affects, everything.
The pace of change has also picked up so much, right? In terms of not just technology, but everything that it influences as well. And for instance, at any given point of time, there was a 10-year period before something new came up. Now it's like, a couple of months to years before things change. And even the work environment has changed so much. So I always think about, how it's going to shape up for our kids and then their kids, right? And sometimes that's not a easy feeling.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting dynamic. I was having a conversation yesterday about Neil Postman, a social critic, wrote a book back in '92 called if I can get the name right, Technopoly, how culture becomes subservient to technology. And, in his term, technology is not necessarily Twitter. He goes all the way back to like the printing press as technology and how we go through these different phases. And it's about how, we start to see where the culture starts to seek its authorization from technology. And you see that with like this reliance on studies and polling and experts and kind of all this other stuff. And, as that stuff, the computational power and the ability of that stuff to be churned out and changed, or theories to be, go around the world, in 10 minutes, they absolutely affect, the pace of change, because, I kind of view it as, it's an inch deep and a mile. Information is an inch deep and a mile wide at this point. And we're, along with rapid change, you see sort of the absence of consideration that you may have had in the past for potential downsides, because you're making change on an inch deep information.
And we live in an economy where it's all dictated by eyeballs, right? How much of visibility are you getting? So when you look at some of these influencers, Instagram influencers and such, who could put it, maybe on Twitter, a tweet out or a post out for a couple $1,000s, and that's all they do for a living. So we're absolutely in different times, and that's scary because the whole culture of work ethic is changing.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, the other part of it too is when you think about like, what is driving change? Is it factual? Is it consequences? Or is it perception? A lot of times it's not, if you look at even just in recent past, decisions that are made that, ignore certain data because that data is inconvenient to a narrative. And that narrative and that political narrative is more supreme now than it's ever been. And you have to wonder what the consequences for society are going to be when a political narrative overtakes ensuring that our scientific studies are scientific. But I also have great faith in the American people. And if you think about, sort of to categorize this between kind of the elites, kind of versus the masses and the common man. And, the story of America has always been kind of the working man, the people who live with the consequences of reality every day, who don't have the margins or, the cash margins to absorb whatever. They've always restrained the follies. And I think as long as the right to petition your government remains, as long as the right to vote is protected, we always have these sort of calibrating things. And we've not yet, I think society is still catching up to how do we calibrate within this new digital world where change is moving fast. But as long as those institutions are protected that allow people to express their wisdom collectively, I think we find that equilibrium.
Absolutely. So for people that want to reach you, what's the best way for them to contact you?
TDSpublicaffairs.com is the best way to reach out.
Awesome. Well, in terms of what you do as an organization in order to reach your prospects, because a lot of the work that you do is not something a lot of people are aware of. Are there any special practices that you use?
As far as sales, yes. I think it's for us. It's a little bit like selling insurance to some people. People that don't realize they need flood insurance.
Exactly.
You may have never heard of what we do, but you need us. Yeah. So that requires kind of an educational process because people often kind of think of PR when we want to do branding, marketing, rollout, or we're hit with some kind of a crisis or a problem we need to do. But the reality is preparation for all of that begins long before that moment. Take crisis management, crisis communications, having a plan in place, having messaging that reflects your core values, having all of that put in place, done beforehand. And but even as something as simple as rolling out a new HR policy, that is by definition a communications problem, because we live in a communications environment where every employee you have has a Twitter account and a camera. And so whether you plan on publicizing this policy or not, you have to plan on it being public. And so everything, not to say that communications drives policies, but these policies need to be communications informed. And so there's a lot of ways in which we can help people, behind the scenes, to either strengthen their hand and strengthen their story, or to mitigate, and to avoid the pitfalls of going out and sort of tripping over their own 2 feet.
So, Jim, you've had a stellar 15-year journey with your organization. What are the plans for the future?
Well, I think we're still young. We're 15 years young, and like everyone else, we always seek to grow, but not to just necessarily grow in size, but to to continue to grow and stay ahead of the learning curve, and to continue to innovate and kind of lead in that respect. It's a young guy in my orbit. He's at the beginning parts of his career, and he's kind of prone to reading books about other people that have succeeded and all this stuff. And he was kind of quizzing me, is like, what's the one thing you've learned, in your career? And the thing I told him is pursue excellence. Don't pursue title. Don't pursue clients. Don't pursue excellence. If you pursue excellence, all of the things you seek will follow. And I think that's kind of what guides us. And pursue excellence with our clients. Pursue excellence within ourselves.
Awesome. So, Jim, before I let you go, one takeaway for the listeners. Anything that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I think I've probably said this on a couple of occasions already, but I guess the takeaway here is, even if you don't think you need it, you do. Everything is political. Being prepared, there's no substitute for being prepared. And in this environment where even if you don't make the decision to, for your business or your brand to engage in politics, you're already on the field, whether you know it or not. So it's important to have values that you believe in, that you believe are defensible, and have a plan to defend them. And we can help with all of that.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Jim, and thank you for sharing your story, and wish you the very best as you move along.
Rajiv, thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.